Last night on Pulse News. A constitutional clash is shaking Washington. The Supreme Court of the United States has struck down President Donald Trump's sweeping global tariffs in a decisive 6-3 ruling, declaring he overstepped his authority. But instead of backing down, the president is escalating, raising tariffs even higher and openly criticizing the court. At the same time, tensions are rising abroad. President Trump is signaling possible military action against Iran, citing humanitarian concerns and regional instability. Trade war, judicial showdown, military brinkmanship. Here's what it means for America and for the world. Washington, D.C. Dramatic showdown between the White House and the judiciary is unfolding after the Supreme Court of the United States struck down President Donald Trump's sweeping global tariffs in a 6-3 decision. Within 24 hours of the ruling, President Trump responded not with retreat, but escalation. The administration announced plans to increase global tariffs from 10% to 15%. Describing the move as fully allowed and legally tested. At the same time, the president lashed out at the court and raised fresh concerns about Iran, even signaling he is considering a limited military strike. The result? A high-stakes constitutional confrontation, rising economic uncertainty and mounting geopolitical tension, all at once. Supreme Court says no to emergency tariffs. The core issue centers on executive power. The president had invoked emergency powers law to impose tariffs on nearly all U.S. trading partners. The Supreme Court ruled that the statute cited does not grant the president unilateral authority to levy broad-based trade taxes without congressional approval. In plain terms, Congress controls tariffs. The majority opinion reinforced constitutional limits on executive authority, stating that emergency powers cannot be used as a workaround for sweeping economic policy. However, 3 justices dissented. Justice Brett Kavanaugh authored a 63-page dissent arguing that the president's emergency authority should be interpreted more broadly. He was joined by Justices Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. The split highlights a deeper debate over the balance of power between the executive branch and Congress. Trump fires back at the court. President Trump reacted sharply to the ruling, accusing certain justices of lacking, quote, the courage to do what's right for our country. He also claimed, without providing evidence, that foreign interests could have influenced the decision. Such accusations are rare from a sitting president and honestly signal intensifying tensions between the executive branch and the judiciary. On social media, Trump praised Justice Kavanaugh as his new hero and applauded the 3 dissenting justices, suggesting they support his America First vision. The messaging is clear. The president sees this not merely as a legal defeat, but as a political battle. Tariffs raised despite legal setback. In a bold move, the White House announced that tariffs imposed Friday at 10% would now rise to 15%. Supporters argue the measure protects American industries and strengthens domestic manufacturing. Critics, on the other hand, counter that tariffs function as indirect taxes, increasing costs for businesses and consumers. Economists warn that broader tariffs can raise prices on imported goods, disrupt global supply chains, increase inflationary pressure, and trigger retaliatory trade measures. Markets are closely watching how trading partners respond, and whether Congress intervenes. Democrats applaud the ruling. Democratic leaders quickly backed the Supreme Court decision, calling the tariffs illegal and harmful to American families. They argue that sweeping trade taxes imposed without congressional approval undermine constitutional governance and place financial burdens on working Americans. The court's decision effectively reasserts congressional authority over trade policy, a major institutional check on presidential power. Iran. A new front opens. As the tariff battle intensifies at home, President Trump has turned attention toward Iran. On Friday, he expressed concern about reports of mass executions and human rights abuses in the country. He stated he feels, very badly for the Iranian people, and described their conditions as dire. More significantly, he confirmed he is considering a limited military strike. That statement alone introduces a new layer of uncertainty. Military action against Iran would escalate tensions in the Middle East, impact global oil markets, strain relations with allies, and potentially widen regional conflict. Whether the shift toward Iran reflects strategic timing or separate policy concerns remains unclear. But the overlap is striking. This moment represents more than just a policy dispute. It's a defining test of executive authority in modern America. The Constitution grants Congress the power to regulate trade and impose tariffs. Over time, presidents have expanded their authority through emergency statutes and delegated powers. The Supreme Court's ruling signals that there are limits, even in times labeled as national emergencies. The key questions now: will Congress step in to authorize new trade measures? Will the administration seek alternative legal pathways? Could this confrontation reshape future presidential powers? Beyond Washington, the world is watching. Trade partners may reconsider supply chains. Financial markets may react to renewed tariff escalation. Middle Eastern allies and adversaries are assessing U.S. signals regarding Iran. When economic nationalism, judicial authority, and military considerations collide, the consequences ripple globally. What happens next? Several scenarios are possible. Legislative action. Congress could move to clarify or restrict presidential tariff authority. Legal maneuvering. The administration may attempt a revised tariff framework. Trade retaliation. Other nations could impose countermeasures. Foreign policy escalation. Any military move against Iran would shift global focus instantly. For now, the United States stands at a constitutional and geopolitical crossroads. The Supreme Court has drawn a line. The president has pushed back, and the world is waiting to see what comes next. Stay with Pulse News for continuing updates on U.S. trade policy, Supreme Court developments, and rising tensions in the Middle East.